My uncle left me everything in his will and cut out his own children. For 20 years, I thought he hated me. His letter explained why. I grew up believing I was invisible to him. Every family gathering, he'd ruffle my cousin's hair, pull them onto his lap, bring them back souvenirs from his work trips. With me, he was polite, correct, the kind of careful that felt worse than being ignored. When I was 11, I asked my mother why Uncle Ray never really talked to me. She got very still and said some people just weren't good with kids. I knew she was lying. I didn't know what about. The moments collected over the years. Small things that didn't make sense until I stopped dismissing them. When I was 16, I came downstairs at a family holiday dinner and caught him standing alone in the kitchen, holding a drawing I'd made as a child, something I didn't even remember making. He set it down the second he heard me and walked back into the other room without a word. At my college graduation, my cousins got envelopes with checks. I got a handshake and something that looked almost like pain moving across his face before he turned away. When I got my first real job and mentioned it at dinner, he went completely quiet. My aunt kept talking, but I saw his jaw tighten and his eyes go somewhere else. My mother changed the subject. She was good at that. I stopped trying to understand it. Some people just don't connect, and that's the end of it. I built my life and made peace with having an uncle who kept me at arm's length for reasons no one would explain. He died of a heart attack on a Tuesday morning in February. Sudden, no warning. I went to the funeral, stood with the rest of the family, and told myself I wasn't allowed to feel cheated out of something I'd never had in the first place. 3 weeks later, his attorney called me. I assumed there was paperwork involved since I was next of kin on some old form he'd never updated. Instead, the attorney read me the will. Ray had left me his house, his savings, and a letter he'd instructed could only be given to me after his death and only in private. My cousins didn't speak to me at the reception. I read the letter alone in my car in the attorney's parking lot. Ray had been 18 when he fell in love with a woman his family refused to accept. They were together for 2 years before her family moved her across the country. He didn't know she was pregnant when she left. He didn't find out until years later, through a mutual friend, quietly, carefully, that she'd had a baby and placed her for adoption within weeks of arriving in her new city. He'd spent years trying to find that child. By the time he did, she had a family, a mother, a life. He hired someone to make sure she was safe and loved and wanted, and when the report came back that she was all three things, he made a decision. He would not disrupt what she had. He would not insert himself into something whole and break it. But then that little girl grew up and married, and her mother, my mother, brought her to a family barbecue and introduced her as the daughter she'd adopted before I was born. Me, I was his daughter. He'd watched me grow up from the careful distance of an uncle because coming any closer would have meant telling the truth, and the truth would have burned everything down. My mother knew. She'd known for years. They had an agreement. His silence for proximity. He got to be in the room. That was all she'd give him. He wrote that every time he kept himself from reaching for me, it cost him something he didn't have words for. That the handshake at graduation was the hardest thing he'd ever done. That he left me everything because it was the only honest thing he'd ever been allowed to do for me. The last line of the letter said, "I hope you can forgive a man who loved you his whole life from the wrong side of a room." I sat in that parking lot for a long time. Then I called my mother. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting 20 years for that call.